Well, hello everyone. How are you doing on this Thursday, the last Thursday of 2018? Man, I don't know about you, but this year has kind of gone like that. Hello everyone. Hello, Franny. Hello, Zombie Dixon. I have not seen that before. Good to meet you. Ellie, good to see you. Travis, Brad, good to see you. Death and Destruction. I love that. Let's see who else is all here. Well, Jeff Doherty, how are you, my friend? Honored to have you in the group today. Well, that's just far out. So, uh, let's see who else is here. Stuart, boy, the room is filling. Lori, good to see you. Light Bear. Did y'all catch Jeff on Coast to Coast AM? I think he was on there Christmas night. Go over there and check out his channel. Had a really good interview. So, how is everyone? I'll tell you, isn't that the world just changing like every day? I mean, seriously. And I don't know about you, but I get the sense that it seems like we're slowly, and I think there's inertia building up now, where it looks like we may begin to see some of the truth. I mean, for me, hello, Kenneth, how are you doing? Plower, hey, Jeff, anytime, buddy. Troy, good to see you. Think about this. I have a sense that this community continues to grow by leaps and bounds. We see it springing up all over. I mean, I have to say, I like it that, the empaths, the intuitives, the questioners, the sojourners that look for that truth, ever elusive, however it may be, that our voice is beginning to rise above the cacophony of the confusion and the chaos of today. And we're becoming more open-minded, much more tolerant. Are we perfected? No. But I don't think any of us want to be. Man, you know what? Think about this, folks. If you are perfect in anything, there's nothing left. Nothing. I mean, how do you improve upon perfection? Now, granted, we're all beautiful spirits here and souls. I mean, come on. I mean, this is like a group of, we can walk and kind of not strut our stuff, but hey, we can wear it and, say, hey, look at this. I don't know what my spirit's going to be like. Is it going to be light? Do we go into another temporal plane? Is this the only flesh plane? Is there yet something else to be experienced where flesh is concerned? I mean, are we only restricted to be humanids, bipedals? I mean, if life exists in the universe, right, other than us, like, I think it does, whether it be the insectoids, the reptilians, and who knows what else. Obviously, they have different shapes than we do. The grays, right? So does that mean we come back? Now think about this. I never thought about this. So do we come back? Let's say, all right, I went through this journey as a humanid, a bipedal. Does the next one make me, I don't know, a blob of ectoplasm somewhere? I don't know. It makes you think because we become so limited in our approach, don't we? So let me just invoke favor upon all of you. I did it before I come on, but I do it verbally because words mean everything. So I just invoke favor upon your lives today, wherever you are. May it grace you like a crown or like a tiara, whichever you prefer. And may peace be your constant companion, and may there be nothing missing, nothing broken found in your lives. Folks, I think we need to go into 2019 declaring restoration. Think about that. We confess, and I invoke that favor blessing every day. Nothing missing, nothing broken. It goes back to, it's a very ancient invocation. The ancient Hebrews had it. I have no doubt that they probably picked it up from the Mesopotamians, and somewhere along the way, the Sumerians got it. It seems like they were the originators of so much. So 2019, a year of restoration. How many of us have things in our lives we'd love to get restored? I'll raise my hand. I ain't too proud. It's the true meaning of shalom. Thank you, Jeff. There you go. There. And so nothing missing, folks. And listen, I was taught by one such as knowledgeable in that shalom that nothing missing means that if anything's been stolen from you, seen or unseen, they have to return it sevenfold. Think about this. In your lifetime, wherever you are on your path, how much do you think has been stolen from you? If you never knew you actually owned it, it's going to be very difficult for you ever to reclaim it. Think about that. So that's what I really think, that together, imagine you get someone like Jeff, Rex, I could just go Trisha G, I could just go, Brian. Just the amount of channels that continue to grow. I need a list. It's almost like I need a scorecard. Okay, coming up today, but imagine if we started talking to all of this and we started speaking not only favor into each other's lives, but restoration. No matter what's coming down the pike in 2019, to be able to speak that's like a covering, So anyway, and that which has been broken, may it be mended as though it was new. So there you go, folks. Brian, good to see you. Patrick, how are you doing? Paul from Newcastle, hello. Maria Reed, good to see you. Angelo, how are you doing? So good to see you, my friend. Angelo, I believe, is down in Brazil, I think. So good to see our folks from all over the globe. We've got everybody represented here. I love it when we can come into these little enclaves. I was watching, I was watching Kindred Spirit. I love Ruth. She's just, that's a person, meeting right here, folks, that you just like being around. Patrick's another. I haven't met anyone that isn't cool. So, yeah. So the globe, that planet, that thing behind us, you see that is suspended into midair. There you go. Got that as a present from my stepdaughter, and she just knows how to pick the right presents. And so there you go. You can see the globe is spinning and being suspended in midair. Amazing how magnetism, gravity, those forces work, that we're so confident that we know all about them. And not this group. We're the first ones to sit up and go, hey, there's a theory out there. So let's do something real quick here. I want to show you some stuff that I thought some of you would really like to see. Have you heard of the Cassandra complex? Yeah. So the Cassandra complex is the name given to the phenomenon where people who predict bad news or warnings are ignored or outright dismissed. It's like sometimes, the milk gets sour, baby. And what kind of a friend would I be to allow you to drink out of that milk carton when I know it's spoiled? Why, now, and I know in some countries, I think Scandinavian countries is actually a delicacy. To each his own. But anyway, why you would look at me and say, you dog, why'd you let me drink that? Well, because I didn't want to bring any bad news to you, Dallin. I just didn't want to do it. So sometimes, you just got to know that you're running out of gas. You need to refill. You can just go on with all the metaphors. So anyway, the complex has been used in a wide-ranging contexts. This includes psychology, the circus, the corporate world, environmentalism, and science in general, and philosophy. Really? Next time someone says, well, you're just into fear porn, baby, you can say, no, no, no. You're suffering from the Cassandra effect. And then they're going to look at you and go, what? That's how it usually happens. But yeah, so anyway, sometimes, as Force said, that happens. It just happens, baby. All right. We all agree to define reality is based upon the individual's perception. I think we can all agree upon that. We're all individually seeking the truth in many different ways. And so that gives us commonality, but really all of us, in the end, it's what we really perceive to be true, which we then become immersed into. But anyway, how much of the internet is fake? It turns out a lot of it. I mean, did they stop the press for this one? It's like all of us, when I read this, well, I think that the internet, the reason why I believe it has sentience, because I don't believe the ARPANET was ever intended to take on this personification that it has, how it now rules the world, never a shot fired, and yet gaining more and more dominance over Homo sapiens sapiens. So it says studies generally suggest that year after year, less than 60% of the web traffic is human. I mean, now this just opens this up wide open to, all right, if it's just 60% are human, what the hell are the rest of whatever it is that's on the internet? How do we define this? Yeah, according to some researchers, a healthy majority of it is bots. All right, I thought about this when I read this. So could not one be reasonably safe to deduce that if 40% of something is in the mix of 60%, that means the 60% indelibly will be interfacing with that 40%. Okay, we all can grant that. That's what bots are out there for, right? So now it's so bad, children, that, well, it's really hard to determine who is real. Are you real? Huh? Am I talking to a bot? Bot? I don't know. It's weird. So we're going to be discussing today, and I'm glad Jeff is here. In fact, I had to pull him in on a special show on this because as we get to where we're going to be getting to, our universe is changing. Our solar system is changing. We're changing. We're understanding now that we have, for the first time in recorded history, we will be photographing with the spacecraft out there, New Horizons, what they call ultimate Thule, the furthest object ever found. Over 4 billion miles from Earth. Now, the sun, we're only 93 million miles from the sun. So 4 billion, it's out there. And what we're finding out, folks, in this is there are thousands and thousands of planets in the Kuiper Belt. I dare say as the years go on, probably before I leave my time here, and, we all want to have it, enough to get accomplished what we were sent here to do. I have no doubt that it will be written that our solar system is not 9 planets, but probably 19 planets. Here's a little disturbing FYI. Life after death, how a dead pig brain was kept alive for 36 hours in shock experiments. So, when I see this, I have no doubt that they're doing the same thing with cadavers. But so how do we approach this? If the pig brain, and apparently the pig, the brain, it is that focal point that we identify reality with, we identify ourselves with. Amazing organ. So imagine this. A person dies, right? They're pronounced dead. Rapid deterioration of the cellular structure all the way down to the ganglia level. Neurons are firing, imploding. Then, out of nowhere, the brain feels this. Zzz, zzz, Do you come back? Does the hippocampus become reactivated again? I mean, if life and consciousness is predicated upon memories are who and what defines us. So if the brain then becomes artificially stimulated, in this case with electrical shock and electrical current, what the hell would that be like? I don't know. I bet you they're doing it. More things. Toyota wants to put a robot in every home and make it your pal. I mean, obviously, we can't seem to get along one another. I mean, I read a report recently that the amount of people that are, well, how shall we say, lonely? I mean, is this going to be the new easy pet? Do robots become our new pets? How does it become your friend? That implies sentience. It implies consciousness. It implies what? Now machine is my friend? Well, they've got enough brothels to point that out. I don't know. This is what happened in Indonesia, folks, with that volcano that went off over the weekend. And look you can still see the ripples. I thought this was so interesting. So, and there you go. So today, we're going to be talking about cataclysm geology. It's a term I've been very familiar with, and I'm going to show you how long I've been looking at this. And I'm just kind of shocked how things are just, wow, moving very quickly. So in geology, there are 2 fields of thought. One is what they call catastrophism, and the other one is uniformitism. Now, the uniformitism is the one that basically I think the money went, because it was where I think they wanted it to go. So you have 2 primary players in this. You got George Cuvier and you've got James Hutton. James Hutton, along with his friend Charles Lyell, they're the ones who postulated the theory in geology that has been adapted in modern geology today as the standard model, so to speak, that geology is not something that evolves quickly. It is something that evolves over long periods of time. It's a slow moving change, and does not broach into rapid change, where George thought just the opposite. And we're going to be getting into what George said about this. Is going to change everything about how you have read the book of Genesis. They screwed it up. Anyway, so that's where we're heading, just to let you know, so you can get the idea of what is taking place here. So when we begin to talk about mass catastrophe, and I'm talking planet-wide in less than a day, wiping out every kind of life form in its past. So I will share something with all of you that I worked on, never published it, never finished it. There's, well, good reason for it, to be honest with you. Was just something, give me 1 second here. I want to get it pulled up. Sometimes we have to drive the bus and text at the same time. I know you don't do that. I get it. So anyway, folks, back in 2003, I started writing a novel. It was called The Start, as you can see here. And I look back now and I shake my head, because when this was being created within me, I think it was actually being telepathed to me, I was having some of the most amazing dreams, visitors' dreams. I called them angels back then. But nevertheless, visitors were coming to me in dreams. And out of one of those encounters with those beings I called angels, I was riding on a train, and I was actually in the caboose. Now, many younger people probably don't even know what the word caboose really means. But anyway, I was back there in this caboose, and there were three beings. They were angels to me. I mean, that's how I wrote it down in my journal. And in that, they gave me this picture. Now, this was a book called The Start. And in chapter 3, this is already, this was a trilogy novel in 3 parts. We're into the second part. The Start has already begun. In this story here, there is a graduate student who is working at Columbia University seeking his PhD in geoscience. His specialty is earthquakes, and more importantly, predicting the potential for megaquakes. He had spent years in developing a computer program, an algorithm, and his hypothesis was based upon Culver's and others that the biggest danger any country can actually be at risk about is not so much the known faults, but they are the unknown faults. And the theory that I made up as an author, you can do that. This was the fact that when we have these sudden tectonic shiftings that take place, it opens up what we call mega fissures, faults. Folks, when you see this, I'm presenting it to you because I want you to see the uncanniness of this. So in this, as you see, as I wrote this, Alex, our student here, was becoming concerned because now, folks, back in 1992 is when I started getting wind of a potential magnetic pole flip. And in my research dating back decades ago, this is where the book came from. And in the book, what Alex actually discovers is that, and it hits, is that there is a 9.0 megaquake due. And he figures it out where it is, and it's tied to the Earth's magnetic pole. So one day I may finish it. It got to be where too much of what I was writing was coming to pass. But anyway, so I'm going to stop the share there. So as in the start, the whole idea of what we call these sudden tectonic plate shifting, I think that there's firm evidence to it. And because of the way history and science has been allocated and the way that the money flows to those particular idioms, ideologies of science, is where you're going to find most of your books, because science can't exist without the big bucks backing it. And unfortunately, the ones that I think are all too often the true seers in science, the ones that defy the normal perception, are so often villainized, ridiculed, and their works suppressed, that when it does surface, so often it's too late. So let's go. This was going to be fun. So let's talk about, for instance, real quick, so that everyone can get an idea. The United States government and our military has, in fact, pretty much gotten wind of this, literally. And as you can imagine, this has become, well, pretty much well known. So what's happening here? Well, if this map can be thought about as something that is true, it shows that there is something about to take place that has been anticipated for nearly 50, 60 years. Yeah, it gets to be a real challenge. I mean, this was folklore. You know, how were you supposed to ever think that this was going to be? Now, this is a further map, as you can see here, that this is the post tectonic sudden shifting map, ladies and gentlemen. This has been anticipated. Now, my question is, if this has been anticipated, how did they know? Where did they get their information? I mean, if you look at modern religion today, you look at all the faiths, everything that you read about, you know, the judgment of God, the wrath of God, you know, is that there's supposed to be the second coming and yada, yada, yada. Well, there's not going to be any water. It's going to be fire. It's all been made up. They distorted the meanings. They didn't know. And this is no Hebrew God. This is no Sumerian God. This is no God at all. It's a cycle. And so this is what governments are anticipating. Now, the only thing they didn't quite get right was the pole shift, but we'll get into that a little bit later. This is the map, supposedly, after this event takes place. Now, we're going to read today where there's not going to be anything left in the United States, but just a very few enclaves. These are the anticipated death zones. Take a good look. And this is the U.S. Navy map of the future America. And again, you can see how far it's been changed. Now, is this going to happen? I don't know. You know, it's so often we all can be victims of misinformation. I mean, that's our first thing that we have to figure out and understand that, all right, if we can admit that to ourselves, then it gives us flexibility. All right, so what if I was to tell you that the Genesis story that you read in Genesis 1:1 is actually about 4.5 billion years old? Yeah. I've left the link to this document. I read this document, ladies and gentlemen, in a very short period of time. I do read a lot, but I'm telling you, it's 57 pages of some of the most eye-opening work. Now, this is a CIA document. You can go right to their website. They were forced basically through the Freedom of Information Act. They had to make this, but the fact that they even had it. Now, the CIA gets into a lot of crap. I mean, they're everywhere. Who knows how many of us may have been, unwilling or annoying participants in some of their experiments. But here's the point. We've got scientists, reputable scientists, just as reputable as the other side has, that say they got it wrong, that this is a known cyclical fact that happens every 6,500 to 11,000 years. Repeatedly, these catastrophes have happened and have happened in a day. We're talking incredible evidence here. So let's go on. Every time the cataclysmic concept has come to life, the beast has been stoned, burned at the stake, beaten to a pulp, and buried with a vengeance. But the corpse simply won't stay dead. Each time it raises the lid of its coffin and says in the sepulchre tones, "You will die before I will. I've lived it. You're going to experience it." Yeah. All right, so what are we talking about? This is no ordinary extinction of a vague geological period which fuzzied into uncertain end. You know, if you look at this uniform totalitarianism model, it stinks. It so gets you deceived that every rock you pick up has to be billions of years old. No. It may be thousands of years old. Here's the evidence. What caused the death of 40 million animals? The corpses delicti in this mystery may be found almost anywhere. Their bones lie bleaching in the sands of Florida and in the gravels of New Jersey. They weather out in the dry terraces of Texas and protrude from the sticky ooze of the tar pits off Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. The body of the victims are everywhere. We find literally thousands together, young and old, foal and dam, calf and cow. The muck pits of Alaska are filled with evidence of universal death, a picture of quick extinction. Any argument as to the cause must apply to North America, Siberia, and Europe as well. Mammoth and bison were torn and twisted as though by a cosmic hand in a godly rage. In many places, the Alaskan muck blanket is packed with animal bones and debris in trainload lots, mammoth, mastodons, bison, horses, wolves, bears, and lions. A funeral population in the middle of some of the cataclysmic catastrophe was suddenly frozen in grim charades. Fantastic winds, volcanic burnings, inundation and burial in muck, preservation by deep freeze. Any good solution to a consuming mystery must answer all of the facts, challenges Hibbert. He's the one who's coming out challenging his colleagues. Excuse me. In this case, the author, Mr. Chan, he said this has haunted him all of his whole life. You know, he said the first step was to gather all the known, accepted data from as many earth sciences as possible. So you look at it, you got stratigraphic, you got archaeology, anthropology, paleontology, radiology, oceanography, seismology, glaciology, and many other fields, all correlating the data between the sciences and to get an answer. But here's the problem. It's not just the fact that there were so-called 5 cataclysms, as the science today in geology wants to take that position. And by the way, religion is right in line with the modern science of geology. In fact, it is the religion who actually funded this. No surprise. So here's the deal. Let's start getting to the chase. And what a dramatic story of Earth's history we uncover. Civilizations of 20,000 years ago, more advanced than our wildest imaginations. Prehistoric legends from Greece, Egypt, India, South America, which became history instead of legend. Lost continents of Atlantic and Pacific, which became dated realities with logical reasons for their sudden disappearance. Yes, Vishnu came alive, a man who lived through the cataclysm 70,000 years before our time. Actually, 10 cataclysms ago. Now, he is known as the Hindu god of the 10 resurrections from the waters. Osiris, too, was rediscovered. He was the Jesus of his time, a man from Egypt some 15,000 years ago. Noah smiled at us from the pages of the Epic of Gilgamesh. He actually was a Sumerian named Inundations, and I always get that screwed up, who lived 6,500 years ago. The ark he built is more than a legend. But you see, it's not a Jewish thing. It's not a Christian thing. It's not an Islam thing. It's not a Hindu thing. Get those, throw them out. Strip it away. It's the interpretations of those visions that you read in those books. And they were either channeled or automatic writings, one of the two. Now, look at the cross-section of the earth that we saw earlier. I'm not going to go up there. You can look at yesterday's one or download this thing. You will see that there are 2 molten layers. There's the orange ones, and the important one is the thin molten layer about 60 miles thick, which is between 60 to 120 miles down below the surface of the earth. This becomes really important, all right? So, now, when we think of earthquakes, we don't think of molten rock coming up. An earthquake happens, you know, buildings fall down, people get killed, and it moves on. No. Now, this gets interesting because if the mantle is basically on a lubrication of what the molten lava does, that's how the mantle rides. This is why they got it wrong. These sudden shifts happen and happen with regularity. So let's go on. The growing ice caps, Antarctica and Greenland, are not centered on the Earth's axis. And because they rotate around the poles, are trying to swing down to the equator. The only way they do it is would be to pull the whole 60-mile thick shell around with them. And if you can imagine, this thing would just literally pull it along. So as long as the shallow molten layer stays plastic, the shell won't shift. But once every few thousand years, the magnetic and electrical ordinariness inside the Earth is disrupted, and the molten layer is allowed to act like a free liquid, which it was all the time anyway. It then serves as a lubricant for the ice caps to pull the shell of the Earth around the inside. In a quarter to a half day, the poles move almost to the equator and all hell lets loose. The atmosphere and oceans don't shift with the shell. They just keep on rotating west to east. And at the equator, the speed is 1,000 miles per hour. So it has to be normally to make one rotation per day. So while the shell shifts with the poles going towards the equator, the winds and ocean go eastward, blowing across the face of the Earth with supersonic speeds, inundating continents with water miles deep. Now, tonight on my radio show over on the Artist First program, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but due to the time constraints here, I want to get into, folks, where all of this is leading to. Folks, the evidence, the ages of the gorges below Niagara Falls and St. Anthony Falls, both are about 6,500 years old. You have to read what happened at Niagara Falls. It's, the sudden end of the Laurentian Basin ice cap in Canada about 11,500 years ago. The uninterrupted years of evolution on the Galapagos over 11,000 years. The geological dating of the Murrumbidgee River Basin system in Australia, showing the end of the ice cap there about 11,500 years ago. The way that the works of the list that go on and on and on show, folks, we have been taught wrong. So here's something I want you to, and I'm trying to pull it up here now, because I want to read to you the Genesis story as it was meant to be. And if you hear anyone in the background, that's Miss Lydia. So she is wonderful, folks. So here we go. You have to, and I'm sorry that I'm having to scroll down here, but you have to understand that this is a large document, and I defy anyone else to do it any quicker. All right, so Genesis, 4,500,000,000 years ago. This regenerate Genesis is 11,500 years ago. Both are in the Bible. A translation interpretation of Genesis 1, 2, and 3 from a reconstruction of what the Naga must have been to give us the chapters as we have them in English, then retranslating them directly from the Naga to English, bypassing the Greek and the Hebrew. You see these things, this Greek and the Hebrew? They screwed it up. They so messed it up that it's still indoctrinated into people. They think that the Hebrew and the Greeks got it right. Throw it out. It's all wrong. And here we go. In the beginning, 4.5 billion years ago, in parentheses, the universe was created in God's great design. Included was our sun and our planet Earth. Chapter 1, verse 1. Yeah, a little bit different, isn't it? And during one of the many cataclysms that occurred during the Earth's history, this one being 11,500 years ago, the Earth's lands were all inundated with raging waters and ravaged by horrendous winds, and the oceans were all dark with muddiness, and the ill wind thundered over the troubled waters also. You see, folks, when I studied Genesis, I went to Bible school. I know what it is. Jeff, all of us, the point is, once you're indoctrinated into this Judeo-Christian mindset, it contaminates everything. Your whole perception is distorted. So walk with me on this. And as the storms, and by the way, remember the planet's rotating, folks, so there's going to be winds, and if you've got changes on the surface, on the mantle, you're going to have a hell of a buffering zone where those two are coming together. Bet you didn't think about that, did you? As the storms abated, sunlight came back to the face of the earth as God intended. And while the Holocaust was abating, once more darkness and sunlight were reestablished and distinguishable. And it was good. And sunlight was again daytime, and darkness again nighttime, in accordance with God's design, and evening and morning made one day. Again, God's original design was that there be a sky between the clouds and the oceans. And in accordance with God's design, the heavens were reestablished. And in that sky again stood between the clouds and the oceans, as the onslaught of the great storms abated. And God's heavens were indeed reestablished, and the evening and the morning were the beginning of the second day. And God's design was that the lands would not be entirely covered by the oceans, as they were immediately following a cataclysm. So this disrupted ocean, now settling, drained off the higher lands. And in accordance with God's design, the dry land was earth and the waters ocean. And once again, it was reestablished and good as God intended. And since God's design was that earth should bring forth grass and herbs yielding their seed, and the fruit yielding fruit containing its seeds, the earth was again reestablished. Therefore, the earth, being reestablished, brought forth grass and herbs, yielding their seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit containing the seed. And it was good, as God intended. And the evening and the morning were the start of the third day. In accordance with God's design, there was normally lights in the heavens, which served to indicate months, seasons, days, and years. They also served to furnish light on the earth, as God intended. And as the great fog lifted and the clouds broke, the sun and moon reappeared, and also the stars. Now, folks, you have to read this to understand this point right here on verse 16. In every one of these cataclysms, that inundation happens, folks, it takes decades for this fog and this mist to get out of the atmosphere. That's why the earth was watered. It didn't have to rain. Everything was inundated. Just as they tried to say, well, we'll go on. And the sun and the moon again were able to divide the light and darkness, which was good. And the evening and the morning were the start of the fourth day. And it was God's will that some of every creature living and bird flying should survive the cataclysmic inundation. Surviving then were great whales and every living creature of the sea and every kind of winged fowl, and it was as God intended and good. And they were blessed with God's original design to be fruitful and reproduce and replenish the oceans with sea life and the air with fowl. And the evening and the morning were the start of the fifth day. And it was God's will that some of every creature, cattle, and creeping thing, and beast of the earth should survive the cataclysmic inundation. Surviving then were the beast, the cattle, and everything that creeps on the earth. And it was as God intended and good. In accordance with God's design, man, who was created in the image God intended, also was to survive and have dominion over the fowl of the earth, over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So it was God's design that man, who was created in the image God intended, both male and female, would survive the cataclysmic inundation. They were blessed with God's original design to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and control it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. And God's design was that man, being given every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which there is fruit of a tree yielding seed, to man it should be food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, wherein there is life, God's design was that green herbs shall serve for food. Wow. And it was as God intended. And every living thing and everything was which survived was as God had originally created, and still was in God's design and was good. And the evening and the morning were the beginning of the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were reestablished, all the host of them. And on the seventh day, the recovery from the Holocaust and flood were complete. And the seventh day brought rest from the fight for survival against the Holocaust and its after effects. And the seventh day brought God's blessed peace, as the Holocaust had abated, leaving those of his creation who survived. These are the same regenerations of the heavens and of the earth as they were reestablished after the tumble previous to the one of this story, when the Lord God reestablished the earth and the heavens. And every plant of the field before that cataclysm was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For the Lord God had not brought rain upon the earth in this region, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there was this cataclysm, and a great inundations arose over the earth. You see, it's plural, inundations. And it was God's will that man should rise up from the earth and keep the breath of life and remain a living soul. This is his story. And it was God's will after a cataclysm that a continent eastward be established. And there in Eden lived the man of this story. And from this land grew other civilizations on other lands, with the motherland in the midst of all being the seat of wisdom and all knowledge, both good and evil. And the inundation destroyed Eden and left only its 4 offspring lands. Note, the next 4 verses are probably incorrect, with the true description locked in correct translations of the Egypt's Book of the Dead and the missing portion of the Piri Reis map. Very important. We have those, by the way. The first land is near the river Pison, which includes the whole land of the Haloth, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good, and the Bidium, and I think we've all read this about the Euphrates. He says he thinks this is pretty probably wrong. And I see I'm running out of time again. Okay, we'll stop right there. We'll pick this up later. People are saying, well, wait. Nope, can't do it. Sorry. Just going to have to end it right there. But you see the point being, folks, and by the way, download it yourself. Check it out. It's when you read the document now, and when I look at all the books that I have around me, folks, the uncanniness of it is that they're all telling the same story. Massive inundations. And it seems to be on a regular cycle. If you study cataclysmic geology, you're going to find that it's a 180-degree opposite polar view of what we've been taught in school. But yet the evidence is everywhere. I mean, let me just say this in commentary. This is where power is given to those archons, and I call religious-minded individuals that have perpetuated these lies, these distortions, the true enemies of mankind. As you read this document and the subsequent books that he gives recommendation to, which are about 15, 16, I think, here's the thing, folks. It does us such a disservice when we become so superstitious, so fearful minded in the anticipation of the future. Man has failed to write in the past. That's why we don't have records of it. These cataclysms come with very frequent regularity. That's a problem. And you can see, if you want to control people, their minds, their energies, invent a religion where fear becomes the predominant motivation. And then start having the channelers, the automatic writers of those sacred books, start predicting the end of days. And they hold you in fear. They hold civilization in fear all their lifetimes. Whereas if it was taught, it happens regularly. The earth wipes itself clean and does it frequently. We've been wrong about all of our science. What makes you think we're right about our religions? That's the question I ask you. Everything we're finding out about our science is being proven wrong. We're finding the same thing about our religions. And now it may be because we understand how all this got started. But again, think about it. The power of control of a whole person's life, because you don't want to go to hell and you don't want to go through the tribulation. Well, no human being wants to go through a cataclysm. I mean, if you do, the question is, why are you here? No. It's abominable to us that billions of people would potentially die. And then that gives you a whole distortion of God. Well, where was God in all this? Well, God said things, man, rise above God. Get above God. There's natural cycles. We still don't understand planetary evolution. We're trying. And maybe that's why there have been so many of us. Now, my question is this. As I was writing last night, actually, I fell asleep writing. Who's doing the reseeding? I mean, seriously. These cataclysms come with frequency, folks. Our species, our genus of our species, we've been wiped out so many times. And we always fail by not leaving the message in the bottle. We fail to do that. And subsequently, when these catastrophes happen, and they do and they will, they always catch us by surprise. Folks, this is well worth getting into. We'll probably pick it up tomorrow because it's just, well, if it's going to happen, right, then that's the greatest opportunity to live the moment of all alive, living in peace, invoking favor upon our fellow man. I mean, if we're living with the fact that our earth, and then maybe we could begin to build ark bunkers. Maybe that's what they have done. Maybe they know this. Maybe they know things that we're just now getting spoon-fed. I mean, what was the whole idea of this CIA with this, what they call sanitized document? I can only guess what sanitizing means by that. Well, fascinating stuff. All right, folks. I'm telling you, we are in for the time of our lives, folks. No matter what comes down the pike, folks, we're going to be sitting here as long as we can, and we're going to be sharing. I mean, the day may come where we can't talk to one another, but I'll tell you what, the day may come also where we can talk with one another without the need of a medium. Just saying. Some of us, I think, are already getting there, aren't you? All right, folks, tune in tomorrow. Thank you for the thumbs up. Appreciate that. I always like the 2 thumbs down. Those are bots. They're not real people, folks. They're just not real. So be good today. Tune in tonight, artistfirst.com, and on the Steiger Perspective. We're going to get into this because I think as we begin to build a foundation of understanding, it begins to take away the fear factor. While we can look at a planet, a comet coming at us and say, well, it happens. We can sit there and hear the sudden shift of this and go, well, it happens. I mean, we're all here for a purpose. Is it going to happen next year? Is it going to happen in 100 years? Who knows? Listen, we can study, we can contemplate, we can pontificate what we read, what we do, and then we add to it. We check it off. We say, okay, we have this one in the archives. We can go back and I'll find other people who have, I want to find people who are well studied in cataclysmic geology. That's a fascinating subject. It's a fascinating science. And it's definitely fascinating from a philosophy point of view. So, may favor grace all of you. Thank you all for watching. You enrich my life. All the moderators and all of you who are here every time I come on, you grace me with such wonderful energy. And I just hope I do the same back into your lives. Folks, I think 2019, for all the negative progenitors out there saying this and that, listen, I have no doubt that there is a sandwich coming that none of us want to eat. But, I kind of look at it like this. If the sandwich is bad, let's make sure the drink is good. Oh, I love it, folks. Y'all are the best. Thank you again. Make sure to tune the other channels out. Brian over Milky Way Weekly, Jeff over at the Christian Whistleblower, Ruth over Kindred Spirits, Patrick Garrett. I can just, Trisha G, I can just go on and on. Thank you, folks. You're the best. And let me just say this. Many of you I've never met, never spoken to most of you. But the energy that you put forth in your words tell me that you are a friend of mine. And I trust that I can be your friend as well. All right? All right. Well, I'm going to go see our granddaughter and enjoy the rest of the evening until I do the radio show tonight. So blessings to all of you. Namaste. May favor be with you always. And love yourself. You love yourself, other people love you too. Thank you all for being here. We'll talk real soon. All right. Bye-bye.